Eat coffee beans right now.
Hi, guys. Welcome to Guild Chat and happy Friday. I'm your host, Ruby, and today on Guild Chat, we're going to be talking to some of the members of our QA team. So let's go ahead and meet them. I'll start with you and have each of you talk about what your name is, what your position is, and what you do here at ArenaNet. Nathan?
Okay. I'm QA Embed. I mostly help out other teams when they need more help.
Okay, that makes sense. And your first time on Guild Chat, so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us some of your time. All right, Nick?
Hi, I'm Nick. I am one of the Living World QA embeds, primary for episodes 3 and 6 of last season and 3 of this season. And yeah, I've done this a few times, so.
A few.
A few.
Thank you again. Travis?
I'm Travis. Some of you may remember me from the XPAC 2 guild chat that we had when we did the Path of Fire launch, and I am the Raids and Fractals embed.
Okay, so QA embed, what does that mean exactly? It's not a genuine question. I mean, I know, but it's a new term.
So we're mostly responsible for the organization and management of QA processes within ArenaNet. We're responsible for like putting together the test passes that we run and kind of being the gatekeepers of knowledge to QA. Like the things that tend to catch teams or catch releases off guard, we try to anticipate those and make sure that we have plans in place to test those.
On top of that, we're also pseudo in charge of making sure that the team meets specific standards set by our leadership, and also, having play tests and with the team and holding meetings to make sure that everything is like well communicated. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like that kind of stuff.
Kind of that liaison between the two. Yeah. Speaking of questions, if any of you guys watching have questions, we're going to try to answer a couple at the end as time allows. So if you have them, throw them in chat. They will pass a couple along to us, and we will see if we can get to those if time allows. I'm finding out how talkative you guys are going to be.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you are QA embed for raids. Nathan, you kind of hop around wherever is most needed, right?
Yeah, so whoever, generally speaking, a QA Embed's role will ramp up as it gets closer to release. So I'm there to kind of help out with some of the extra stress that comes on with that, to alleviate that.
Yeah, it's like there's like primaries usually for each individual team. Like he's the Raids and Fractals. I'm one of the Living World teams. And Nathan's role is like help out every single person and kind of also help keep that communication going in between each one or each different team.
Jeez, that sounds like a lot.
It can be.
He does a very good job at it, to be fair.
Yeah, it sounds like. So I feel like especially you, Nick, will jump around teams. Like once, episode 3 is out. That's off the books. We are ready to move on to the next thing. So you're jumping around between teams quite a lot. How do you maintain a good workflow? I know you're very good at what you do, so I feel like communication isn't a problem.
Appreciate that.
But how do you keep track of that, jumping from one thing to the other? Is there overlap?
Yeah, so there's definitely overlap. So one of our other embeds, her name is Melina. She's actually getting married. So
that's tomorrow.
That's like pretty soon. And because of that, she has to go take care of all of her wedding stuff. So I got made primary for episode 4. And hopping from 3 to 4, like there was a lot of responsibility stuff that needed to get taken care of. And on like the ground level, basically, to answer your question, a lot of sticky notes. I have my entire desk is just filled with sticky notes that are like, I need to remember every single thing that will happen and that people have asked me to do. And I have like all of them on my desk and then like this subsection that's basically the done pile. And every single day I look at my done pile, or like at the end of every week I clean up the done pile and I look at it and I'm just like, this was really busy week, or this wasn't really busy week. And, like, that's just the way I do it. Like, Nathan has something similar, except for he keeps it all in Outlook, because he's a lot cleaner than I am.
I have tasks for each different team, so that I know exactly, like, I can switch gears very quickly and be like, what do I need to do for this team right now?
Yeah.
and then swap back and forth between that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like to go back to the living world as a whole thing, each of the living world embeds, there's 3 of us. You know, we are primaries on our own episodes, but because each of the episodes is so large and such an undertaking, because we want to make sure that each of them is the best that they can be, we help out each other to also keep that flow of knowledge going and to find areas that, you know, one of us might not have found. Like each of us has our own strengths, so we kind of help interplay that within the teams. And like QA is all basically about like trying to make sure that we can get things out as clean and as fun as and as balanced as possible. So making sure that multiple eyes are on it is really important.
Yeah. So, and when you say you're the primary, that's not. This is all on your shoulders. I mean, you've got people helping you that you can communicate and work with.
Yeah.
Something I'm interested in, because you mentioned sticky notes and you mentioned Outlook, and that's like, Outlook is like the thing after my own heart. I have so many different folders that I'm like throwing everything into in Outlook, so it's very similar for me. How do your processes differ between you guys according to what works best for you? I'm actually super curious about that, because it's not like, okay, everybody is issued sticky notes and that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Gosh, I can really only speak for our Raids and Fractals, obviously, but we have a very iterative design style, so we're very quickly making changes. So we'll usually just have an email sent out by our producer at the end of a playtest, which will contain a list of all the things that we've noticed from the playtest. So I mentioned earlier that it's kind of our job to write the tests and kind of be the keepers of QA knowledge. So how that ends up playing out, at least for Raids and Fractals, is I'm not the only one that's testing the Raids and the Fractals. I test it with the team. So developers can go in and they can be like, well, I don't really like how that boss is acting, or I don't really like how this particular hallway leads into it. So what we then do is those kinds of notes get put into an email from our producer that gets sent to us, and then we produce those we put them into the bug writing software that we have, which is wow, total mind blank there for a second.
It's okay.
Anyway, we put them into Jira, which is one of the software tools that we use. And then from those bugs, we can triage those bugs out as this is something that's a high priority fix, as in we need it fixed by tomorrow for the next playtest, or it can be something that's a little bit later on, like do we really want to fix this? What kind of gameplay opportunities does it offer? And then it's, I guess I would have to say, like, from as far as like I'm not entirely sure how it is on Living Worlds, but I feel like Raids and Fractals is very fluid in how we do things. It's very, in fact, when it comes time to regress the bugs, which, if for those of you who may not know, regressing is when you take a bug, someone's made a fix to it, and then you go back and run that bug a whole bunch of times over and over again to make sure it doesn't happen again. Our regressions sometimes aren't terribly detailed, so they could just say things like, boss stalled during fight, which could mean a lot of things. At the time that we write the bug, we know what it means, and we go in and we make the fix. But later on, if you weren't actually there to see the bug, you probably couldn't regress it. So I usually have to do and regress all of the bugs that we have.
Okay, that makes sense.
And to kind of go, like, to dovetail off of what Travis was talking about, I don't know, having conversations with each of the other embeds, because it's not just us, you know. We have a bunch, and we aren't like, even that bunch isn't the entirety of our QA department, because we also have, like, you know, like test 1s and test 2s and things like that. But like having conversations with each of us embeds, it's pretty consistently clear, at least to me, that like a lot of us do things very differently. Like with Travis, you know, a lot of that regression, iteration process and scheduling is balanced between him and his producer. Whereas with Living World, because we're so large, you know, we have to make use of our test 1 and test 2s a lot more, because of the fact that like I couldn't do it by myself, and like myself and like the other Living World embeds and even Nathan, we wouldn't be able to do it by ourselves. And on the question of like how do we differ, like I said earlier, each of us has different strengths, and it's all dependent on like how we do things. What's cool about ArenaNet is like we are allowed to introduce process and kind of pitch process and play to our strengths when it comes to our roles, as long as we get the work done and get it done well.
Yeah.
So what I do is like, you know, I go into our engine and I will like review a lot of the scripts, You know, I'll review a lot of the content. I'll actually look at the scripts and create passes based around my interpretation of how those, you know, of how that stuff is built out. Because for me, that's how I can find where all the where I perceive the pain points to be. And yeah, like what Travis was saying, like you said that like your producer schedules those play tests and kind of creates those triage lists. What me and my producer do is like we split it between team and iterative playtests with alphas. Like I handle that stuff, and then like stakeholder reviews are handled by our producer, and it's like I'm usually the one that's like writing up and sending out all of those notes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's iterative and different between each team.
And kind of divide and conquer.
Yeah.
So how does that work? And you can just pick one of the last things you work on. Please pick something that's already released.
Never.
You mean we're not allowed to tell them
spoiler time.
Please, I need this job. How did the process work for one of the recent things that you helped out with?
One of the more recent things that I helped out with was I would say 3 would be what I worked the most on. And so you have to. What I'm doing is I work under the embed that, you know, the primary embed.
Yeah.
So I have to learn their process, and I work with them. And so each one's different. Some of them, like Nick uses the tester ones a lot more. And so we end up like sending them the information and like how to run the tests. And so I will like assist with that. But other times it will be like if I'm working on like an art pass for like a weapon or something, I will just like the embed will be like, hey, could you just check this out? And I'll just test that myself. Essentially, just like it really depends on like who they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes an art pass for a weapon. What are you looking for?
In general, you're looking to make sure that the weapon looks good when people are using it. So
it doesn't vanish.
Yeah, I mean, or like when someone like turns invisible, like what does it look all right? That's something we notice a lot. Is like there will be a checkerboard pattern. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you're looking for stuff like that. You're looking to see if the weapon like will stretch something. If the weapon is too long, if you're holding it correctly, yeah, that's what I do more for like what we'd be releasing when we release MTX items.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but like with Nick, it's much more like make sure that this content actually you can run through it, and sometimes that can take a long time because you have to go through it and see if it will if it will reset correctly and other things. So that's more like I ask someone else to do it, and then I review what they've gone through.
Okay. All right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about how the process starts. Like, our last raid wing came out, so they come to you and, all right, we're going to do this raid wing. What do they need from you? What's the first thing they need from you?
So one of the things that I'm fairly certain Living World is involved in this as well, but QA actually sits in with the designers during the very beginning of the design, because it allows us to see, for instance, if they want to do something like, say, moving platforms, which are a huge QA risk.
Oh man!
Not as much as they used to be.
No, we've definitely made some good strides in making that less scary than it used to be.
Thanks to Ben Arnold mostly. Shout out to Ben Arnold.
Yes.
Ben Arnold. Thank you, Ben.
The wizard.
Yes.
That way, early on, we can identify, hey, these are going to be some large QA pain points. We're going to want to test around a lot. We're going to test around this a lot. So we may not test it specifically, but we know that things that interact with it might go badly. So by being there at the earliest of the design phase, we're able to identify those sooner. Sometimes that can, for instance, let them know that maybe they have to look at other alternatives because it's just going to be too much of a QA lift. And then sometimes it allows them to go, okay, we love it. We really want to do this idea, so we're going to focus on it, and we're actually going to make it better. So like that, for instance, is where those changes came in from Ben Arnold. Is like he saw how bad moving platforms were for QA to test, and he's like, well, I really want to do them, so we're just going to make them better for you to test.
Okay. So you're not just in the back of the room going, what if we didn't?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely a collaborative work. We let them know that, hey, this is we're kind of like a warning sign.
Okay.
Like, hey, this could be trouble. We're willing to take it on, but just so you know, it might take a lot of time away from something else, or it I mean, it also allows us to be able to say something like, yes, please do that. It's really easy. It's super fast for us to check, and it's super fun for the players. So do that.
Yeah, and kind of going off of what Travis was saying, like, we are usually this like funnel of tribal knowledge that we try our best to document. But you know, there's just so much that we like through our careers as embeds learn and know. So like Travis was saying earlier, like we are included pretty early on in the process. We go to all of the like the scope meetings, the design meetings, the implementation planning meetings, because through those things, like we can make sure that people avoid specific pitfalls. You know, we try to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah.
Because it's important to make sure that everything is as clean, as efficient, and as balanced as possible. So we want to make sure that we don't waste time retreading old, you know, old issues.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know what I was gonna say. Never mind.
Well, and because you guys you've worked on so many different bits of content and been involved in so many of those things, all of those pieces come in and you can remember, hey, this is something that is relevant to what I'm working on now.
Yeah, there are often times where you'll go up to a designer and be like, hey, this is something that I'm worried about because this is broken in the past. Could you maybe like could we look into this, right?
Yeah.
Look into maybe a better way of doing this, or you know, something that would be less risky.
And it enables you to not only, it sounds like it enables you to not only offer a warning sign, but maybe offer potential solutions based on past knowledge.
Yeah, and also like be able to point them in the direction of like who might know the right answer, who the other designer was that ran through these issues already and have of course more tribal knowledge on how do they solve those issues.
Well, it sounds like Ben. So
for moving platforms, yeah.
There's that. All right. So I have a slightly more specific question. What are some of your favorite work stories about things that you guys have found and or caught before it went live? Okay, I love the face you just made.
I can answer each of those.
Okay, I will take whatever because I've seen some of like these bizarre, completely bonkers QA stories from the trenches that never make it onto live, and I want you guys to see these.
So, I mean, like, one of the things is that I do in addition to being the raids and fractals is I'm also the automation embed, kinda. As in, we have automation that goes through and checks the things of code that you generally don't want to do because it takes up a lot of time, like logging into every single map or making sure that when you do an attack, a particular like things take damage.
Yeah.
So as a result of doing those automated testings, I ran across a thing we weren't quite ready to talk about yet. That might have gone to live.
Oh.
And so, you know, I kept that from going to live because of that. So.
Oh gosh.
I mean, obviously, since we're not ready to talk about it yet, I can't say anything about it. But
I'm glad you found that. Jeez, what did you do? You just like, I just picture you running across the building. Hey.
It was. I happened to actually sit right next to the people that are working on this, so I just kind of turned around and I was like, "So this thing failed. This usually fails when this thing happens. Is that related to what you're doing?" Yeah, that led to the designers in particular going, "Yeah, we should take care of that."
Oh man, what about you guys?
Oh man, so I've been here for quite a while. But all of it is like blended together into like a hodgepodge of different bugs. Nick, do you have any? I'm still trying to think of something.
I'm thinking of one that you had mentioned to me in particular about an NPC where you could turn him hostile or friendly.
Oh yeah, there was a on the Plains of Ashford. There was an event that had been broken for a while, and I was scrubbing through some of the player submitted bugs. And
thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I found one that was basically saying like this event they never saw it again, and I was like, that seems strange. What's going on? So I looked at the event, and it was working fine for me, but apparently like people would only ever see it in the first week after a patch came out, and so I went and investigated. couldn't figure out what was wrong with this thing. I brought a friend in, and they then we looked at it together, and it just so happens that we both interacted with the same NPC at the same time, and we both chose different choices because the way this event worked, you had to choose to pacify the char, and if you chose the wrong choice, they'd turn hostile.
Okay.
So what happened is, I chose to pacify, and my coworker chose to make him hostile, and so they became both pacified and hostile at the same time.
But you had to make those two opposite choices at the very same instant.
Right.
Okay.
Once that happened, they would turn hostile forever. You could kill them. The event wouldn't start up again. And it's one of those things where you're just you'd never think really to do this.
Yes.
But once you figured out, it worked. You know, we were able to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's the part that I really like doing, is going in and figuring out like something that it's like a really large pain point, and figuring out like how can we fix that.
Yeah. And that's interesting to me because it seems like a lot of this testing is, what is the absolute weirdest, most unlikely edge case situation we could create that would cause a bug? And let's think of them all.
It actually comes up when you're not playing games, when you're like playing games at home, and you're like, I wonder if, and then you break the game. And you're like, no, I gotta turn off my QA brain for a little while.
But write that down first,
right?
And then we'll go back to work and we'll test that.
This is for like other games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just, this seems weird. Let's see if we can apply it to work.
Right. Exactly.
How about you, Nick?
For me, I mean, honestly, it's all relative. Like, things when I started out that seemed crazy egregious now are like, okay, that'll happen.
Of course you would do that.
I can think of one specific example and I'll give that, but before that, like there is like a slew of issues that we catch that I'm so thankful that players never see. Like, we've run into issues.
And then I ask you to talk about them. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. But I mean, it's important to know. It's like, we've ran into things that would delete your characters, we've ran into things that would make it so that way you can never log in again,
Oh, God.
More specifically, so let me go to the fun one before I go to all the painful ones. The fun one was that
my stomach hurts now.
in episode 2 of season 3, so that was back during Fire Island, that area. When you could turn into a Mersat, you had the ability to attack other players and stomp them. So as you can tell, while it was fun, we want to make sure that didn't get to live.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's. I'm like stressed out thinking about that accidentally going live and just wow.
Yeah, the griefability of that was crazy.
Oh man.
But yeah, and there are other ones where it's like you would log in to your character and it would immediately crash because of the fact that our entire player data is tracked through progress bits basically that get set and unset. And if a progress def gets shrunk at any point, and you already have a bit set on the side that got deleted, the game will basically crash constantly. So finding those is both edge casey and really important.
Okay, so go back for non-QA people.
Okay.
If your progress def gets shrunk.
Yes.
Now un-QA that.
Okay. So if you were to do something, right, in an achievement, let's say, and then we were to change that achievement in some fashion, and push it to live.
Right.
If we weren't attentive to what things could have been set by the players, what happens is whenever you log into that character, you will constantly crash because the game is basically like, this doesn't exist. I don't know what to do.
It makes no sense.
Assert, and then you're just gone.
I'm done. I'm out. No.
Yeah. So it's there's no hard key example that I can really give for those because it's happened a lot of times. But it's basically we make sure stuff like that doesn't happen.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I can give a specific example.
You can. I think I know what you're talking
terrified.
about too.
So during Path of Fire, we had an achievement for reading all of the books in Cormier's library.
Yeah,
that used to be a longer list, and ultimately, just because of various time, we couldn't make it as long as we wanted to, so we had to shorten it. And that's exactly what Nick's talking about, where it used to have more entries than it did. So if you had already completed one of those entries,
Like on
Like as on the test character, because obviously
Yeah.
it hadn't
Yeah,
gone
yeah, yeah.
live
Hadn't
yet.
hit live at that point.
It would try and check that when you logged in because you were still working on the achievement, and
but it's checking for a thing
But
that
it's checking
doesn't
for a thing that
exist,
doesn't
and it
exist,
just gets confused and nopes out.
Yeah. I thought you were going to talk about the inventory one that happened a little while ago.
that one.
That one,
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Well, now you're gonna.
Oh.
I want to know.
Okay.
Or do I? Am I scared now?
No, this went live.
This went live, yeah.
Some of you may remember.
I think maybe
The-
I blocked this. I don't remember.
Some people may have blocked this. You may remember that a while ago, a couple years ago, we did our very first ever on Guild Wars 2 rollback. Live
yeah.
server rollback.
Yeah.
Oh, I did block that. Thanks. I brought this up myself.
You're
Carry on. asked
That
for this.
was a result of us on XPAC 2. We had created code for our bigger bags. So how bags are stored is in an array, and we created new code that allowed those arrays to extend farther. What we didn't account for is that our inventory code determined soul binding based on its index within that array. So if you extended an array's length, instead of making space for it, it would just spill over into the next array. So if your Guardian's code ended at this point in the array, and your Mesmer's code started in this array, it would get pushed over, and anything that used to have belonged to your Guardian, the game would now think belonged to your Mesmer.
Oh,
Which
my
caused a lot of issues, as you could probably imagine.
I
Yeah.
do remember that now. Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like going off of that, like, these are things like when issues like that occur, it's always like breaking ground issues that we would have never been able to catch,
Well,
like
yeah.
like with episode 3 as an example, that memory issue that we had where like for the first day everybody was unable to go past the second instance. That was
was
something
wild.
that like we would have never been able to catch before. And but we've like I said earlier, like we always push to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes twice.
Yeah.
So we have created process and developed and or iterated on our current tools and or made new tools to make sure that something like that never happens again.
Yeah, the episode 3 thing, I think it was you and I talked to Z about that a little bit too. And it was fascinating after the fact.
Yeah.
Once
After
it
that
was fixed,
nightmare
it was
over.
interesting.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you guys and learning so much. I had no idea the boundaries that we pushed at that point. So that was fascinating. And the processes that we put in place after the fact to be like, hey, what if we didn't do that again? That would be cool.
It's always when you try to break new ground, and we're always trying to push the envelope in some fashion to make sure that players get the best experience possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that
that's
is
just kind of how it goes.
well, yes.
And sometimes you get weirdly wacky fun things that come out of the bugs and not
Yeah.
account destroying madness. So, for instance, the very first thing I worked on when I came to ArenaNet, actually, I worked externally for a while, but the very first thing I did when I came over here was I was part of the Heart of Thorns cleanup, that big patch way back in April.
Yeah.
At the time, we happened to be, I believe they were prototyping mount stuff. On the some mount code to
Yeah.
they were going to come out with expansion 2 and they wanted to do mounts, so they were playing around with it. What could they do?
We've seen some mount weirdness on Guild
Yes,
Chat too.
Yes,
this
we
actually
have.
had nothing to do
A
with
lot.
mounts themselves, though.
Oh, really?
What had happened is they were playing around with the camera because we knew we'd have to have different camera setups for mounts and players, and somehow all of the corpses got tied to the that camera. So we were in the middle of doing Heart of Thorns cleanup, and we get a patch, which is always scary for us as QA because that means someone put something new into
What
the
happened?
game.
What happened?
And when we load back in, we'd go through, we'd test things, which of course requires killing things. And as we'd kill things and we'd turn to do something else, all of the dead corpses would turn with us. So they would all face the same direction the character was.
That's beautiful. It is beautiful. Yeah. It's poetic.
That's horrifying.
So you'd have a
great.
you'd have this pack of dead chalk around your feet that would follow your camera as it moved around.
Talk about living with the consequences of your actions forever. Wow.
Yes. Another odd happenstance of that was because I happened to be doing one of the warrior animations, which causes you to spin, when I killed one of them,
Yeah.
it actually took the corpse and attached it to me.
No, so
So I had a little chalk corpse orbiting me around as I moved through the map.
This just sounds
you,
like a
like-
fun time. I don't
did you like fraps that or something?
Oh,
Because
absolutely. I have a GIF of it. I
I-
can totally share it with you.
at some point I would love to see that because that's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of seeing that, Nathan shared a whole bunch of like QA gifs with me that we should watch because it's like a best of things that didn't make it to live. Can we look at those, Mark? And can we actually see them on the monitor briefly so we know what we're talking about?
Yeah, and we also have a slew more, but these are like
Yes,
some of the
otherwise
good
we'd be
ones.
here like literally all day.
We love taking memories.
Oh,
Okay,
this one,
so
yeah.
what's this one?
Do you want to talk about it? Nathan?
So this one, oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay, that one, yeah.
Nope, okay, come back.
Wait.
Ah,
We can talk about this one.
okay, let's
Uh,
talk about that one.
So this, you know more about this one.
I mean, like, it's basically
It's Sideways Boat.
yeah. So if you all remember in episode 2, you have this boat that can path around. I can't.
They're getting,
Mark, I can't tell which one
somebody
we're
needs
sitting
to
on.
QA this.
Okay, so for this one, basically what happens is the way that these moving platforms are built out, and episode 2 is kind of like the point where we were like, all right, it seems like we're going to be using moving platforms in season 4, so we should really push like to get these things fixed. The way that it's built out is basically there's a path variable with a bunch of points that this thing moves down, but the way that it was built out, and this was built out by Cameron Rich, who was a designer on the episode 2 team, who's
Yeah,
fantastic.
He is awesome.
And I watched him do it a few times. So it's a little hazy exactly on like every point, but I'll try my best to explain it. Basically, what happens is each of the points has a different like rotation, and what happens is it will do this thing called interpolation, where it takes the one point and another point, and then kind of like pans in between each one.
Okay.
So what would happen is after it circled around a few times, something got messed up with like the interpolation data, or I guess it like each one kind of like slowly shifts and adds on. So it got to a point where it added on too much, and then it would just get stuck in a specific stance, but continue to move down that path. So that's what you're seeing here.
And the cat frantically trying to keep up.
Yeah,
Please, wait. I cannot.
because
Okay.
all boats go sideways.
This one was about in episode 3. This is during the
Forearmed is forewarned.
yeah.
Canuck, why?
And essentially, Canuck would start just throwing bombs at allies rather than throwing them at enemies. Yeah.
Did we
Yeah.
figure out why?
Y-
He just. I do
mean,
what I want.
So some of these I haven't actually like seen through.
Okay.
So I don't know what the solution obviously was that he no longer does that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for him, what was actually happening here is that Kevin Freeman built this out, also a fantastic designer for my team. What was actually happening is as Canuck was running,
Mhm.
he would be choosing random targets and then firing off this skill when he was going to go plant seeds on his own. But what would happen is that never really ended, so like something happened and that handler didn't get interrupted or something along those lines. So he would keep on choosing like random spots and just throwing out these bombs constantly. And that's pretty much how it worked because he had to run while doing it, which is like two different things that have to be focusing on the
Yeah.
same time. So one was turned off. He was done running, but the part where he's throwing bombs never got turned off.
It's
so
just too much for him. This
Yeah.
also reminds me of something that I really love when I'm looking at a bug report. Sometimes it will have the issue and then the expected behavior, which for some reason is so funny to me because it'll be like Canuck is throwing bombs at allies. Expected behavior: Canuck does not throw bombs at allies. Which, I mean, I get that they have to be filled out, but what more can you possibly say?
Right?
Like,
Yeah.
I would like him to stop that very much, please.
Yeah.
Like, please don't hurt my friends.
Yeah,
Canuck
there's
is not a traitor.
there's like it's like there is an inescapable pit here, and the expected behavior is there are no inescapable pits.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
like
Stop it.
yeah, please.
Yeah.
Okay,
Speaking of hurting your friends.
Speaking of hurting your friends.
This is in the exact same instance, exact same area, except for you are the one using the bomb. And what we found out is that
It's finally quiet.
yeah, we didn't
Everyone's
we
dead.
didn't really define what what teams this was supposed to affect, you know?
Oops.
So like it could hurt everyone and not just your enemies. But hey, it's finally quiet.
Seriously, the NPC chatter at that instant is perfect. It makes me so happy.
Yeah.
So, were you just like tossing bombs at everyone to see what happened? And probably
I mean, yeah, like that's
this makes me so happy.
I think each person kind of like does their own thing, you know. Everybody
Yeah.
works in a different way, including like everybody, like all of our testers.
Yeah.
And for this one, it's just like it's a fun job, you know. Like
Yeah.
you get to play the game that you enjoy, and you get to try out a bunch of dumb stuff that will lead to stuff like this. So it's just, hey, I'm gonna drop bombs everywhere and see what happens.
Yeah,
Totally.
It's usually an I wonder if moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
We do usually send like guided like this is what you should look for, especially if we have like a new tester. But like oftentimes these are just things you learn while you're going through. Like generally speaking, when I have like when you give me something like this, I want to see if I can use it on my allies.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
that makes sense.
Yeah, it also takes like a certain personality type. Cause like I have like my friend Mark, his name is Mark Orski, he's one of our testers, he's fantastic. During I think it was episode 1 or 2, I can't remember, there was a reward, or maybe it was episode 3. There was a reward where it's a cannon that you can place on the ground.
That's 3.
That was 3. Okay, thank you, Nathan. There was a reward that you could place on the ground. It was the cannon, but the cannon had collision. So what you could do is you could put another cannon on top of it, and then another cannon on top of that, and then you could jump on top of that, and then you could jump and put another one on top of that. So you could basically have like, but you could only ever have I think like 2. So it would just keep on stacking on top of each other
That's
until you hit the
cannons all way
skybox.
down.
Yeah, and it's just like, I'm always amazed by these things because you know like. When these things all come through me and Nathan, at least for my team, and then we triage them all out. So I get to see all these things, and sometimes I'm like, how the hell did you figure that out? How did you do that? You know, because it's like that. It's like you have to want to be goofy with this stuff, you know,
I'm just
to make
so
it
sad
happen.
we took that out.
I know.
There was an issue actually when we did Fire Island.
Mhm.
That it was actually a live submitted bug.
Mhm.
It was if you go into the instance with the Mersat,
Yeah.
and if you went into the instance, you left, you came back, you jumped up on a platform, he would teleport up with you, become invulnerable, and you couldn't do anything anymore.
Mhm.
And if you went back in, it was also still broken. But it was like this thing where like, why did you do this?
Why would you do that?
Well,
Yeah.
why would you go through all this effort
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it broke it, but it's like, who would have thought of doing that?
Oh my, yeah, that's
Yeah.
and that's what we were talking about earlier. Like, what is the weirdest, most convoluted, bizarre edge case thing you can think of? All right, let's try that and see what happens.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, hey,
Speaking of weird and convoluted,
So
great job, Mark.
wait, oh no, wait.
No, we gotta do Slidey. Gotta do Slidey first.
So
Okay.
that one was an issue with the Halloween jumping
Yeah.
puzzle, and if you fell just at the right time, and then and failed, it would teleport you back to the beginning, but you would get stuck in this animation state, and so you could just go around sliding around on the floor.
The cape flapping is the best for me. It's just the animation's so good. And I remember we had that for a while. Like that was a thing.
Yeah.
And
I mean, like, well, like, what's unique about things that happen to the player is that what looks like the same bug can also be different bugs. Like, you can also
Oh.
get your character stuck in the state, or you used to be able to, by getting CC'd, like, at a very specific moment during your animations. And this would happen to you. You'd just be, like, bouncing around,
This is my life
jumping
And-
while laying down.
And that's some of the difficulty that comes with it is you're like I don't know why this is happening, and sometimes you get bugs back and it's like the designer's like, I don't know how you got this to reproduce, and you're like, I'm not really sure either, and you have to like
No.
figure out like what specific things all came together to try to make this bug happen.
Yeah, if you basically it's
me.
constant puzzle solving.
yeah.
It's like that's what being a QA really boils down to, is like creating puzzles and solving puzzles that are like handed to you.
So if like 3 different things are causing the same bug, you say, okay, so I was falling, this happened, and now I'm sliding around on the ground. They say, okay, I fixed that thing where it's falling, and they hand it back, but it's still happening. So now you have to figure out what else is causing it.
Yeah.
Right, and you have to like kind of like You have to, first make sure, does it still happen? Is it happening the exact same way? What happens if I
Right.
change? Like, sometimes it's like I have to change one variable each time, being like, all right, so it's still happening when I'm doing it. What happens if I try doing it, when I'm not map loading? Or, you know what I mean? Like,
Okay,
there's,
yeah.
and kind of like trying to tweak it to see what's actually breaking.
This is more than one puzzle.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh gosh.
basically.
That sounds super fun.
It is, and time consuming.
Yes.
And at times stressful.
Okay,
still fun.
let's look at the moonwalking teddy bear. I know that's not at all what's happening, but that's what it looks like to me.
It does, yeah. Basically for this one, the bear, like the agent, got stuck in its swimming animation. So even though it's on land, it thinks it's swimming. So like those corgis are like those dogs that you hold over the water and then they're
Yes,
like,
I know exactly the
that.
video you're talking
Yep.
about.
Wait, are you talking about
as they're lowering him?
Yep, as they're lowering him, or like when they just hear the water and then they're just like doggy paddling. That's basically what's happening right here.
Okay, so that's
Our
yeah.
version of it.
He's just being lowered into a tub.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else we got? Oh yes.
Oh, right.
Zomorous is like, nope.
Oh my god.
What happened? Why?
You want to talk about that one?
This is actually found by Brett, one of our other embeds.
Yeah.
I'm actually not quite sure what's going on. It has something to do with dismounting. Travis,
But
do you
it's
know?
great.
This was when they were testing mounts, right?
Yeah, it was from the mounting or testing. Sorry, from when we were testing dismounting on mounts. Gosh, I'm not sure I can say because it might be a little bit too much
Okay, that's
magic
fair.
behind the curtain.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. I mean, basically what's happening is like, as you know, the I was about to say Mystic Toilet. That's what everybody calls it. The Mystic Forge.
Yeah, nobody's ever heard that before.
Nope,
No.
never.
Mystic Toilet, brand new phrase.
Yeah, the Mystic Forge like will spit you out. So basically, what's happening here is like you jump, you move, your character's over here, but then the Mystic Forge is like, nope, you're still inside of me, and I need to kick you out. So what happens is your character is then pulled back into it because the game is like, wait, no, you should be in there. So you're like, oh no.
So much
And
confusion.
But then Zomorous is like, no, I want you out, and then you're just like, bam, back out. So that's basically what's
So
happening.
Zomorous is arguing with itself as
It's like Zomorous and the game server are having a dispute, and
Okay,
you're
that's
just
fair.
the thing they're having a dispute about.
fantastic. I'm mostly just like watching the characters fly around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
There's a lot of character flying around stuff.
Right? That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
then
goodbye.
this one, yeah, it's the same issue to
I
an
can't.
certain extent,
Please.
showing up in a different manner, where it's basically the client and the server are talking to each other, and like this gadget is like, I should be doing something to the player agent, but it's happening after like the player agent's
Yeah.
already out of that area, so that's what causes things like this.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because with mounts, our game was built around no mounts. So when mounts were introduced, it was like you can now move way faster, and with everything being built out to go, like with things not being built out to go as fast as players were doing, like it caused issues like this where we had to now account for the fact that like, hey, this thing can enter and leave this trigger volume rapidly, faster than we've ever been able to do it, which, as you can see, caused problems.
Yeah, and this one's also
Okay.
dismounting, causing you to have infinite jumps.
Mm-hmm.
I failed to see the problem, but okay. like, and
Yeah, it seems pretty good.
I have places to be.
Oh, there
I
are some
must go.
times. There's some times where you get a bug and you're just like, no, I don't. You're like, okay, yes, I need to report it, but you're like, but it's so
But
good.
it's so good. Oh god. Like I remember, I'm probably gonna get flack for this one. When we were
yay.
making legendary armor. Should I talk about the?
Well, it's too late now.
Okay.
No.
Fair. So
That's out of the box.
yeah,
Nick.
so with all armor sets, we have to worry about ESRB concerns, and what was happening
oh, yeah,
is
we just can't show that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we can't show that one now.
I
what
like
was
how the
happening-
camera's only on you right now.
Of course. So what was happening is that we die and we do specific things to make sure that we don't like go outside of our ASRB terms of
Right.
service. So what happened with this one was that I was dyeing the male heavy armor. It's only specific to the male heavy armor, by the way. And you could dye the pants to be nude toned. So it looked like the Asura, the Norn, and the like human Sylvari men all weren't wearing pants. So you just see like this like
Fantastic.
crazy heavy armor and then their butt cheeks. And it was great.
Fantastic.
It was one of my favorites, and I felt so sad writing up that bug because I was like, but can't we just
Can't we
just
have them?
keep that in here?
No? Okay, that's awful. Okay, so yeah, we can't show. Okay, so what happened? Yeah, what happened here? That's oh,
You'd know more about
That's
that.
that's
Yeah, that's
actually
more-
that's pretty simple. In this case, what ended up happening is when you go onto a mount, you've noticed the camera adjusts to see it. It's
Yeah,
actually
right.
moving into a separate camera at that point. In this case, it just didn't attach it. The camera attaches to your mount as an agent,
Mm-hmm.
and this time it just didn't reattach to the character after dismounting.
so we're done here.
Yeah.
just I'm done, and then
But I'm midair. Too bad.
yeah.
As,
But then once you're dead, it runs a refresh on that camera, and it reattached it.
yeah. And like going off of what I said before, like, when we break new ground, it will surface new issues. Mounts were the biggest ground we've kind of like the biggest undertaking that we've really done, and as you can see, there are a lot of bugs that come out of that stuff.
How terrifying was that?
It's more fun than anything else. Like, I mean, Joel has the best stories more than likely because
Oh, Joel always has such good
But-
stories.
But yeah, like at least when I was working on the Roller Beetle, like so many new camera things came into play, and like so many
dude,
new
right.
like physics things, because it's just like, oh, this dude goes egregiously fast now, and the game just breaks in so many new ways when it comes to mounts, and I don't know, I love it. It's great.
You look like you just thought of a new story.
Yes, I did. I don't know if Joel's shown it yet. Has he shown you the Has he shown the rapid fire raptor yet?
I don't think so.
So, during design,
Let's find out.
so yeah, when we were working on mounts, when we were still working on the mount dismount button, the mount when you created the mount, it obviously creates a existence of the agent that you then
Right.
mount. Well, when you were dismount, we hadn't yet set it up to where it wouldn't despawn the instance of that agent.
Oh, is this like 40 raptors?
Yes, so you
Yes.
could spam the dismount key and it would launch raptors ahead of you. You could just send 40 raptors shooting off into the distance.
Raptor gun.
Basically.
And another version of that, when you hadn't quite gotten it to work yet, it wouldn't dismount you, but it would keep it in the right place. So you'd try to remount, and it would summon the next raptor on top of the previous one. Which
Oh,
would
was
summon the
that
next
like
one.
giant stack
Yes,
of raptors?
so you'd have
Yes.
this giant stack of 40 raptors on top of one another, but you were still at the top and controlling them, so the whole stack of raptors would move.
That was my favorite. Yeah, we showed that on a previous guild chat, and it was just like this giant stack of raptors lurching around the map. That was one of my favorites. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how or what the justification would be, but I wish we'd figured out a way to keep like huge stack of raptors. That was fantastic. Okay, what's this one? Oh yeah. Oh.
In this one, it's so there was a kill field around the boss for when so players couldn't get in after the boss had already started. But it just so happened that it also didn't remove your gliding, so you just slowly
Just this corpse gliding
gently
through
glide down.
to your grave.
Yeah, to your grave.
Jeez.
You're so glad, and it's just new
Yeah,
fashion.
you just kind of hang in there.
Yeah.
That's awful. Okay, what else do we have?
Oh.
Farron. Oh no.
This if oh god.
Oh, are we going back
Oh,
to Farron
wait.
1?
Okay. Wait. We just couldn't bear to see dead Farron.
So that's me. But
Oh, that's you?
yeah,
Okay.
Sir Gardzachar.
All right.
So if Farron would help you out with squashing the bugs. If you just let him do his thing, he would get to the last one, never squash it, and just turn sideways and just start jumping up and down.
Oh, sweetie. Oh,
Like,
Farron.
oh, you tried. I mean, it's the most we can hope for.
And, you
He's
know,
just very
I'm scared.
disappointed in himself.
Okay, so this is something that we've talked about before, where different types of enemies will also fight each other.
And Nathan, you should totally talk about this.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So this one is the shark is an event in Episode 3.
Domain of Korna.
Yeah, Domain of Korna, and essentially you could just kite him throughout the entire map, and he wasn't the same team as everybody else, so he just fights stuff for you, which was really convenient.
I like it. And I had to watch it a couple times. I was like, are they fighting each other? They are.
I mean, it's what we all hope for, right?
So how did you fix that? Did you just put him on a shorter leash or be like, okay, now he fights no other enemy?
I mean, it would just be to, if I understand correctly, to just swap the team to be on the right team,
Yeah.
Okay.
so that they wouldn't fight each other.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
that's
this is
one of the stats.
this is a similar one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where
This is fantastic. I love the Choya like come back. I'm like, no,
oh man,
no, you get back here.
Yeah, this one's a little bit slow-mo, by the way, just in case y'all were wondering.
This
Great
is-
shot of the tank shot.
It is a very great shot of the tank shot.
This is so perfect. It makes me so happy 'cause he just takes that shot right upside the head. This guy's like, okay, that's it. You're not worth the fight. The Choya's like this tiny dude. Like, you get back here.
And just like throws some stuff at him. Yeah.
oh gosh.
And then levitating Choya. What is
Yeah.
happening?
It's an issue with our nav mesh.
Yeah.
Where it thinks that's where the ground is.
Yeah.
Um,
So basically, the way, like a little peek under the curtains, the way that our engine works is that we have this blanket or like bucket of paint, basically, for
Okay.
lack of better terms, that we dump over the map or lay over the map that has all non-player agents like NPCs and like hostile enemies and things
Mini
like
pets.
that, and mini pets. Yeah. All those things adhere to that like blanket on where they can and cannot move.
Okay.
So what's happening here is basically that the nav mesh didn't get built correctly in that area, so enemies would be able to like basically run fly over things. And what happens sometimes is that the characters will be on one part of nav mesh, and then there will be a breakage, but they can basically like ET fly off, and then just keep on running within that specific like path. And that's pretty much what's happening here.
Follow your dreams, levitating Choya.
Yeah, because if you notice, like the other people around him are like sitting
Yeah,
on,
they're
they're
totally-
they're stuck to the nav mesh. So this is just he walked off and is now flying off into the sunset.
Just kept going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then there's these guys.
I mean, yeah, it's a similar issue. They just can't figure out how to get around the wall essentially.
And my favorite part about this is if you zoom out a little bit, there's an enormous opening
Yep.
about 2 inches to the left, and they're just like, how do doors work? So is it just like a pathing thing?
For this one, I
This-
don't specifically know. It could be a pathing issue. It could be like there could be a point within that path that's stuck inside the wall. Because what happens is like we'll build out this content at the same time that the map artists are working on their stuff.
Mhm.
So sometimes props will get put on top of specific points. So what could be happening here is that prop got placed on top of one of the points, and they're hitting that point,
Okay.
and it's like the next point's on the other side of that wall, but they're trying to follow that exact path, and they're just like, I don't know how to get past
Please,
obstacle.
what do we do? And none of them are picking up that loop.
Oh,
Okay,
this is
here we
this is
go.
the
This
piece
is
de
my favorite.
resistance.
what is happening?
I
Wait,
think
go back, go
honestly
back.
that one is just a like perfect storm kind of thing
Mhm.
where
Okay.
it was just like the NPCs just met up in just such a funny way.
And also that camera angle too.
Right?
It's really
Oh,
wicked.
yes,
so
it's
good.
just
I mean, those types of things can just happen while you're, like it's like an NPC's in the wrong spot or something.
yeah.
Oh my god, though.
He's just like it's the turning.
I'm pretty sure that was in real time too. That's not slowed down.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I think the character was walking
Oh.
basically.
Okay, and
Yeah.
just trying to interact
Yeah.
Yeah.
as he went past.
So what like systemically what's happening is that the one that's walking has the other character targeted, and then when that happens, your head has the ability to kind
Yeah.
of like move around to face whatever it is. So as you're walking closer, your head's turning further and further towards towards your.
And he's slightly taller, so you've got the looking.
Yeah, then you're just like, oh,
It's
hello
just so
there.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you guys want to answer a couple of questions? I think we have some time. It's just about 1 o'clock.
We cut off
So,
at 1, right?
We can go a little bit longer if you
Okay,
guys.
cool.
Yeah, we have a little bit of time. So I will kind of let you guys look at those. I did see at the beginning that apparently Sunday is International Software Testers Day.
That's
So
cool. I did not know that.
everybody get a cake
Oh, okay. Yeah,
or something. So, all right, guys.
I can. So for the how the expansion stuff is. So the question is from Immortality X. How is it? How is it to test expansion stuff and then play at release? Is it still fun? And does it provide an advantage? It definitely does provide an advantage because you know exactly like the content that you're going to be working on. Like I can go through a lot of the content with my eyes closed.
It probably feels really smooth too.
Yeah. And I mean, it does take away a little bit of the luster, like because
does,
you
yeah.
know it's coming, you know how things work, you've seen behind the curtain, but it's quite fun to like be able to like. While I've been here, I've actually gotten a lot better at just playing Guild Wars because
Really?
there's sometimes where it's just like they're like, we need you to do this naturally, and you're like, but this is a really hard fight. It's like, oh well, you got to figure out how to play the game.
Godspeed.
Like,
Yeah.
like with the Hearts and Thorns one.
Oh my god! So he put me on a path back when I was a tester, and it was to run through Hearts and Minds, the final instance of
Hawthorne.
Oh, I know
Hawthorns,
it.
on challenge mode, and do it naturally
You're mean.
because we
It
were
had to get done.
because we were going over the content to, when we were doing the reworks.
Okay.
And so I had to learn how to fight that fight in challenge mode with 5 other people without any.
Other people.
I knew what you meant.
I had a pet, okay.
Fair.
Pets are people too, Nick.
Of course.
Yeah,
yes.
and I had
You're-
to figure
you're
out like
understating.
what were the meta builds. I had to figure out
Okay.
like how to do damage, and how to avoid all the stuff on the ground.
That is some in the deep end stuff right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew.
I can now do that really easily too.
Okay, let's talk later.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, it does get repetitive because we do have to play these things throughout multiple variants and multiple iterations. So like, it's also our jobs to know the content like the back of our hands. So when we enter live, it's the enjoyment that I personally get out of it, at least now, isn't me playing the game, but it's seeing others play the game and how they react to it, and if they enjoy it or if they don't enjoy it, and if they don't enjoy it, why do they not enjoy it, and how can we better serve those wants in the
Sure,
future?
yeah.
How can we process that feedback? Yeah, but
Oh, that's a good thing to watch.
yeah, because at a certain point, like playing through the content, at least once again for me, this might be subjective, but it can get like, okay, the game is out now. I'm just gonna run through it like I did, like
Yeah.
every other time.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's see. What else? I'm letting you guys decide. I'm not like directing you, so.
So do like, how about you're like Nathan, me, Travis?
Sure. Why not?
Okay.
All right.
I like the second one.
Which one? What test tools do you use at ArenaNet?
Yeah.
I don't
I
know
hope
how
so.
much we're allowed to talk about that.
I mean, you can still talk about like the dev commands that we have.
Fair. Yeah. So within our game, we've got some external tools and we got some internal tools. For testing, mainly what we use is these things called /dot commands, which is basically what we do is we put in a console command into the chat box in the game, and it will cause specific things to happen on the back end code side, depending on what it is. So, for example, like I don't want to die, so I'm gonna like type /.nd, which means no death.
death.
So my character will never drop below 1 health. Or I want to be invisible, /.invis will make your character invisible.
You
One
can
thing
just run through the map without getting aggro then.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't realize before I was testing here is, because I had been a tester somewhere else, I was like, do I have to make a level 80 character before I start testing? And so we have commands for things like that to just
Yeah.
turn you into a level 80 character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're constantly iterating on these commands. Like for that, it's /.omega reset. And as like mounts came out, like we made it so that you can unlock mounts, and it's like a couple weeks ago I got the feedback like, hey, can we get commander tags on those things? So what we do is then we'll just go into the engine and like futz with it, and it's like, okay, now when you use it again, you'll get commander tag automatically. So it's just
Okay.
like all of these things are getting constantly iterated upon. We have this thing called /.examine, which used to be massive, so we found ways to cull it down to like the most important information. Or we have this thing called /.t, which is /.teleport. It used to be that you'd have to put in the exact string of like a name of something.
Oh, we don't know that.
Yeah, and it was very tedious and painful.
Yeah, like y'all know that, but
Yeah. So what we did was, I think it was Ben Newell, one of our lead programmers.
Yeah.
He changed the command so that way it does partial matching, which is basically like if there are 2,000 things and you type in like a part of a word, it's going to look at all those things and find whichever one has that specific subset of letters, and then push out that one. And if it's more than that one, it'll populate a list of like at minimum 5, or sorry, at most 5, and it's just like, okay, here are things that matched that like partial input, and then
Yeah.
you could choose which one of those.
Yeah, it helps you narrow it down.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that change has helped us immensely.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
'Cause, it'll at least start narrowing it down.
Mhm.
Well, and you had mentioned like you're testing weapons and stuff, and you can create items instead
Oh,
of
yeah.
having to.
Yeah, you can create all the items. You can detach your camera off your body to like look at the
Yeah.
items a little bit closer.
Mhm.
You can slow down the animations so that you can kind of like see how it is as somebody's like
Yeah,
attacking.
you can slow down time on the map after you check to see if someone else is on the map.
Or
Yes,
sometimes
Of
not.
course.
Sometimes not.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see what else.
It's your turn, Travis.
I'll go ahead and take from Drizal. What can I, as a programmer, do to make QA's job easier from our point of view?
Drizal, do you work here?
I think there are really three things that are probably the most important things you can do. The first being to communicate. That's probably the most important thing to do. Let QA know when you're testing new ground or when you've made a slight tweak to something. Because sometimes those slight tweaks, you don't think of them as anything big because you're looking at the code at the time and you're like, there's no way that anything could possibly happen with this. And then you find out 6 months later that no one has their soulbound stuff correctly. So yeah, just communicating, letting QA know when you're doing something
Before and after.
before and after you've done something.
And to go off of that, like I think the most important point, not just for QA, but I think every team in general, is communication is like the most important thing, because at least for us, like we try our best to communicate to all the other departments, and the more everybody knows, the more empowered we are to make good decisions,
Yeah.
because we have all the breadth of knowledge that's necessary. And like going off of what Travis was saying, like if I'm somebody that like fixed a bug, right? If I'm a designer that fixed a bug, and it's like a C bug to fix this one thing.
C bug, by the way, is severity.
Yeah,
C.
severity. Sorry.
Okay.
Our severities go D, C, B, A. And basically what it is A is like, this needs to get fixed no matter what. B is
Okay.
like, this needs to get fixed before ship. C is like, this is bad, but we can still ship with it. And then D is like, if you want to fix it,
It
like,
would be nice to have.
This
nice to
rock
have.
looks weird.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can be seen as feedback. Sometimes they are real bugs, but they're like small enough you'd never really worry about them.
Okay.
Yeah. But basically it's like, I could fix a C bug in my like black box content, right? And I know it's going to fix it here. But what I might not be considering is the fact that that thing then changed to this thing that then goes over to here, and that thing has a B bug because I fixed this like C or D bug on an actor, So it's just over communication, in my opinion, is really important, because it's like the more everybody knows, the more everybody is educated on things that are going on.
Yeah.
The more we can prevent issues from happening, and the easier it'll be to tackle issues when they do happen.
It's kind of like Minesweeper.
Yeah.
And assigning that severity, the DCBA,
Yeah.
allows everyone to see that and make decisions on the use of their time, because you only have so much time.
Yeah.
Right.
And okay, what do we need to do with the amount of resources and the amount of time that we have? So everyone, and it's a communications tool.
Yeah.
Right.
So everyone working on this stuff can see, okay, what do I need to triage, like you were talking about earlier?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Secondly
what
is
else?
debug commands. Anything that allows your testers to save time helps so much, because, for instance, if you have a long series of events that you need to test, but the bug is always in the 5th event, if there's no way to easily skip to that 5th event and have all the actors in the right place and all the right triggers set, you have to manually go through all of those.
Jeez.
And it doesn't seem like a lot, but 10 minutes every time you're running something, when you got to run it 20 or 30 times, adds up super fast. So any kind of debug code, and what's really important is that it can't just like skip to it. It has to put everything in the right state for it too, or
It has
can
to
cause...
feel like, it has to act like you've played through that content.
Right, because otherwise you could end up getting false positives there. And then probably the third most important thing after communication and debug commands is, and there goes my train of thought.
Two.
So we might want to come back to point 3.
Okay.
Okay, so we have time for each of you to do one more question.
Okay, cool. Nathan.
So Charlie's asking, what advice do you have for someone who's new in QA and wants to become a better tester?
Too.
Yeah. So my my thing is don't be afraid to ask questions. Like when I first started working here, I was very afraid to ask questions because I didn't want to like take up somebody's important time. But you have to realize that your time is also valuable, and the more questions you ask, the faster you will learn about how something works. Because that's really what it comes down to, is you need to learn how the game works internally in order to be able to like point out bugs even before they might happen. So if you don't ask questions, you won't be able to get that. Yeah. Also, in my opinion, following a proper formatting for things like bug writing is really useful.
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
What?
This just got super interesting.
No, it's fine.
Wow.
I remembered my third thing, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Should we finish up this question first?
Yes, let's finish up
Okay.
this question. I just
Okay.
wanted to.
Yeah. Anything you
so
want to
much.
add?
Yeah, I'd say this is like definitely useful for QA, but I think it's also useful for kind of like breaking into the industry and career in general. Is fail fast and fail forward. Like, do not be afraid to make mistakes. You know,
Totally.
because a lot of what we do is make mistakes. You know, a lot like, and not just playing the game to find bugs, but like I said, like we missed that memory thing in episode 3. That was a mistake. Like, granted, it would have been a super difficult thing to find, and we didn't have the tool set, but it was still a mistake that was made, and we failed. So we learned from it, and we're going to move forward with it.
Yeah.
And really, that's kind of what it boils down to in being QA. Is just like learn from your mistakes and the mistakes that others make. Be communicative and just kind of have fun with it. Because at the end of the day, like if you don't love your job, what like
Yeah, seriously.
like to be a QA, you need to enjoy doing this specific subset of things. Because if you don't, you're not gonna have a good time.
Yeah, it's just plotting in here and doing the same thing over and over, and and that's like you said, it's you're putting a puzzle together and you're loving it,
Yeah.
and that makes a huge difference.
Anything to
That's
add?
good.
Gosh, I'd say probably just get creative. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's not just the things you never think of; it's the things you don't even think to think of thinking of.
You're so far outside the
The
box.
unknown
Yes.
That's what that is.
it's you there's never a wrong thing to try. I mean, the worst case that happens is nothing happens, and then you've done your job.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
as long as you're not, you do need to be kind of acceptable some level of monotony, because you are going to have to run through the same content dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of times, and you have to be aware that that's something that's going to be part of it, and you don't necessarily have to love that,
Yeah.
but you should be aware that you're going to have to do it.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something where the more creative you can be with it, the easier that kind of thing is, and the more you get to try out weird things that you wouldn't ever think about trying.
Oh yeah.
And dev environments are a great place to do it because
Yeah.
there's no consequences.
Right.
It's fantastic.
This is very true.
I guess it's me.
Actually,
I
wait,
have
what's
the-
your
the
third
third
thing?
Yeah, the third
Wait,
thing.
what's
Well,
your- I'm
also
very
figure
curious.
this out.
Yes. So the third thing, as programmer, designer, or whatever, to help QA's life is know how it can go wrong. Whenever you're doing something, at least have an idea of some of the things that could cause a failure on it.
Okay.
That way, QA at least has a vague idea of where to start. Like, for instance, if someone were to tell me, hey, I made some changes to fractals about how to load in,
Surprise!
and I'm like, okay, what am I looking for? Like, did you change loading times? So, like, should it be faster to load in? Is it a method in how you load in, how you select different things to load in? Because it's not having an idea of where to start. I mean, technically there's only one way to load into a fractal, but if I'm not sure if I know what I'm supposed to be looking for, I don't know if I
Yeah.
failed this change.
If it's just I made a change to this thing, go find it. Good luck.
It's really nice when they say something like, I changed this and I'm worried this might happen. I'm like, oh, I can go look at that for you. I
Yeah.
can go like, look at it like from a holistic point of view, where like from all sides, and say, okay, I feel comfortable with it. I don't think it's gonna break, right?
Okay.
Rather than just being like, yeah, the change you made looks good. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't sure what to look for. So
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree with that.
All
All right,
right.
Nick.
So I'm gonna butcher this name probably, so I do apologize. Denari Debet asked, without spoilers, can you give concrete examples of what you've done to keep things coordinated and preserve continuity? Ruby, I'm
that's a
going to
good one
ask you
for you.
this, so get ready. Is it
Yay.
okay to talk about things that we ended up not doing? So I'm mostly talking about.
That's like saying I made a change in this fractal. Go look.
Well, no. Okay, so the Farron thing from episode 3. You remember that?
I think we decided not to, if it's what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. So then
That's a conversation I happen to have already had. So.
Okay, yeah, no, that's good to know.
Sorry.
Sorry, y'all. But basically, things that we do to make sure that we keep things coordinated and preserve continuity is really looking at the time box that we have and figuring out what we can best do to get a return on investment for the time allotted. Like, for example, I use the alphas a lot, like, because we want their feedback on things, and to preserve continuity, like, these are people, our alphas are people that have played the game like more than anybody else, honestly.
Yeah.
And they love it, and they love everything that goes into it, and they want to be a part of it, and they want to help, like, make it the best that it can be.
Yeah, definitely.
So, of course, like, having them participate in our playtests and having playtests that are tailored for them, and kind of having these conversations about what's going on with, like, the story and the content that we're presenting and the characters that we're presenting, helps to really preserve the continuity and make sure that the feedback that we're getting is wholesome. It's things that people who play our game enjoy, whilst also making sure that we are always being cognizant of making sure that we don't cater to a specific subsect of everything,
Right.
because that's also important.
Yeah. That's kind of dangerous to do.
Yeah, that's a good answer for this question, right?
Yes.
That makes sense.
That is.
Okay.
No, that's good.
Just
No.
making sure.
It's as concrete as we can get.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
Mhm.
All right. And Travis.
Huh. Last question.
Ooh,
Pressure's on.
Got this, man.
you get one.
Oh, gosh. Do I take the fun one?
Yes.
You do you, man. You live your best life.
Gosh. So I will actually go ahead and answer 2 of these at the same time.
Ooh, you rebel.
Yes.
Okay, go.
So, as Nick mentioned, I am going to slaughter this name
Yay.
probably terribly. But Eduardo Pedrero asks,
Sure.
why can't mini pets be as fast as Ranger Pets minions? Is their AI too sensitive to tweak? And Matt Sessions asks, what do you do to help keep your day fresh while playing the same content over and over? So, by keeping my day fresh, I believe I have an answer for the question about mini pets.
Okay, awesome.
So part about keeping your day fresh is all about finding new ways to do things you've already done 100 times. So this is part of that whole being creative thing that I mentioned earlier. So a lot of times you can do things like maybe you don't like. Nick also mentioned earlier about us having certain commands that don't exist in the
Right.
live environment.
Yeah.
One of these is a command that allows us to change the species of our character. So
Oh, right.
perhaps you don't feel like running the event as a char today. You would rather run the event as a whale.
Oh, I haven't done that.
It's fun.
Or maybe you would rather maybe you would perhaps rather do the heart 200 times larger as a character than you actually are. What? Or maybe 10% of the size of a normal character. So
Okay, well, there's a tonic for that. That's less.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, those exist.
those exist. But I mean, we can go well beyond what the tonics can do in a
Yeah.
development environment. So one of the things that you can, so because of that, because of changing my size and doing all kinds of other things, you notice specifically the difference between, say, when a Norn moves and when an Asura moves. A Norn takes very large, deliberate steps, and a Asura takes lots of tiny, frantic ones. But they actually move at the same speed in the game.
Okay.
Which is important.
Which is very important.
Yes.
They move at the same speed. It's just their animations are increased. So, if I understand it correctly, the reason that mini pets can't be as fast as ranger pets or minions is because they're very, very, very small. So,
Their legs are short.
And their legs are very short. So as a result, a ranger pet will look normal as a normal gait when it's running. But if you were to take a mini pet and make it move that fast, it would just be zipping along at a super fast rate.
The legs are like hummingbird wings.
Yes,
Right, exactly.
And it looks terrible.
Okay. That makes sense.
So that's, I could be wrong, but that's my understanding and how I've seen it work. So it's just a presentation thing. We don't want mini pets to look like their poor little hearts are going to explode when they're trying to catch up to your character.
Also, I'm pretty sure we've written up bugs about mini pets going too fast.
We have.
Yes.
Yeah.
And too slow. Too slow and too fast.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yes.
Everything is wrong. That explains what, like, you know, your character will stop, and like 5 seconds later, your mini pet comes like, comes like puffing up. I made it. Wait for me. Put me in your backpack. Something. Anything. Yeah. Okay, that makes some sense. All right. We are, it's like 1:15, so we are, and I know you guys have to go back to work, so thank you guys very, very much for helping us kind of uncover. I mean, I talked to Nick about this a couple weeks ago, and it was like, you know, I know you guys find bugs, and that you test the game, and that's kind of it. Why don't we kind of look behind the curtain and let the players see how you guys do your work? So I really appreciate you guys hanging out with us and letting us chat about QA for about an hour or so. I really appreciate you guys taking some time.
Thank you.
So
Welcome.
thank
Yeah,
you. I
yeah,
will
we
let you guys
will
get
do
back
it.
to work, and I will see you guys on the next Guild Chat. Thank you very much.
Y'all have a wonderful
Bye.
weekend.
Have a great weekend. You get some rest.